for joining us slightly late in the day for you. But if I can dive in straight into the conversation and explain to you also, you heard towards the last part of the earlier panel, and the rest of the conversations that we have this afternoon have mostly been around the social aspects of climate change. I think for me, one of the main things that emerged were even experts who have worked on important things like health have struggled to find the interconnection sometimes. But experts who have been working on other issues of equity and justice see those connections so deep that the changes that we think need to be brought about for climate action have to be extremely fundamental and deep rooted. So nothing cosmetic will work. And on the other hand, sometimes in the international climate rhetoric, we talk a lot about India's climate gains, the targets that it has set itself up for, the massive renewable deployment that it's undertaking. And there is a lot of shine of, what India is doing. I wanted to spend, the next couple of minutes just to talk with you on how all of this shakes out in your perspective, and what do you think are some of the stepping stones and some of the opportunities that lie in front of us, no matter how much gloom and doom exists. And talking of opportunities, I do want to start with indeed a very promising news from earlier in the week about the Rockefeller Foundation and IKEA Foundation announcing a massive financial commitment of $500 million each, a joined up commitment of, I think, $1 billion, which will leverage another $10 billion. Now, all of this is both mind boggling as well as life changing. And, it will bring a lot of solutions onto the table for the developing countries. I'm sure the participants here and all of us would certainly, before we talk about other issues, would like to hear upfront on your thoughts on how this vision will be delivered by Rockefeller Foundation, and what are the mechanics of it? How will it make the whole contribution of philanthropy to the solution bigger?
Thanks, Aarti, and of course the Arthan team for giving me really this opportunity to be part of this important interaction. And I was privileged to be at least able to join the last part of the panel conversation, which is really rich and such important issues that emerged. Climate change and other transnational crises in the 21st century are not only exasperating inequity, but also proving too complex and large for existing institutions. We really have to reimagine the international order and partner together with governments, multilateral institutions, privates, and civil society actors, as well as philanthropies, to meet these challenges in new ways. We can't be doing the same stuff that we've been doing over the years. We need to be bold, collaborative, more of integrated thinking and investment that will address the short-term recovery as well as long-term challenges. And really the time to act, Aarti, is now. We are committing $500 million of our own resources to set up the leading global vehicle to drive decentralized renewable energy market forward. Just this past Monday, as you said, the IKEA Foundation announced that it will join this vehicle by also committing $500 million of their resources. This will result in $1 billion investment to fight climate change and end energy poverty, the largest single philanthropic commitment ever to scale distributed renewable energy globally. Our goal is to empower 1 billion energy poor people with renewable energy and prevent 1 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions within this decade. In addition, the platform will foster 300 kilowatt hour per capita in annual electricity consumption, increase household incomes by 2x, improve gender equality with women as 50% of productive use customers and employees in the DRE value chain, and make significant progress on human well-being. We will launch this new vehicle at COP26, and our goal is to bring a $10 billion pledge in aligned investments by then, which includes a $1 billion commitment, which was announced on Monday. We expect the bulk of the remaining funds to come from DFI pledges, as well as other bilaterals and multilateral donors. We've already worked alongside US International Development Finance Corporation and the IFC, who aim to deploy $2 billion each in partnership with us. So we're far advanced in our conversations, and these numbers are not just coming from out of the blue. This new vehicle will stimulate a major market transformation, through galvanized political commitment, expanded financial resources. Investment is both going to be emerging and scalable business models and aligned global action. And the viability of these projects is not unprecedented for us. We've already seen success with Smart Power India, an initiative that we launched in 2015. In 2019, we launched an exciting collaboration with Tata Power, which we call TP Renewable Microgrid Limited, or TPRMG, which aims to be the largest mini-grid company in the world, serving up to 25 million people in 5 million households across 10,000 mini-grid sites in rural India. TPRMG has commissioned 127 plants already, and this is in the midst of COVID year. What we are seeking to do here is replicate that model on a global scale. We've already done a fair amount of work in Myanmar and Africa, and we are very confident that we'll be able to reach the targets that we've set for ourselves in the next decade. We will forge a modern vision for a green, distributed, and enterprise-led development model that avoids traditional coal-based growth and refutes the notion that addressing climate change and achieving more inclusive growth and development is a zero-sum game. In doing so, we will develop green growth pathways for developing nations, particularly the underserved communities that we heard Chetna kept bringing that up in the previous panel, and make a major contribution to the global politics of climate change. So I hope, Aarti, that gives you a sense of what our aspiration is and where we are putting our resources.
Thanks, Deepali. And the more you followed the climate philanthropy space and how this is becoming of increased interest to the foundations as such, it just is pretty clear that this is a massive amount of commitment. And somewhere, the devil's advocate might ask a question on how really it will happen, because it will be in the details. But I guess, like you said, these are not just numbers, and more than just numbers. You spoke about this galvanizing of the political commitment, where I think a lot of meat to the bones will be added on what kind of political will eventually goes behind it. We can go a little bit later into that discussion also, but how you are talking really of the story of empowerment, of putting out this money into decentralized renewable projects. And the earlier panel was also talking about just changing the ecosystem of solar, because as long as it's large and utility scale, it makes less sense to the community in that sense. But the moment you make it decentralized, it's far more empowering. I'll come back actually to that point. I do want to delve on that a little bit more, but the fact that this is going to be launched at the COP, and this year the COP is happening after one missed in-person COP from last year, so the attention is going to be that much more. India has set itself up for one of the most ambitious climate goals, but it also, on the other hand, has very big, enormous targets to supply electricity to large unelectrified populations. Of course, on paper, we say that we have electrified every village, but there is lots to be done in terms of still getting quality power to many people. And the recent G7 you saw was a big moment on climate, but at the same time, it didn't move the policy needle so much in terms of anything new that will be done. I just wanted to ask you on what do you think are the challenges that are being faced by emerging economies to just understand this conundrum of big summits and events on the one hand, big problems of energy access on the other, and how does that come together even in terms of managing that challenge for a country like India?
Great question. So it really, in the backdrop of the most devastating global crisis in a century, it was only fitting that the theme of the G7 summit this month was to ensure we build back better, which is really what is required at this time. There's been a lot of evidence that an internationally coordinated policy response will deliver maximum output by creating positive spillovers, trade growth, stability, etc., from which all countries will benefit. Commitments made by G7 countries to achieve net zero emissions by 2050 is a welcome step. In fact, the US has committed to achieve 50 to 52% reduction in net greenhouse gas levels from 2005 levels by 2030. China's net growth target by 2060 also signals positive intent. So while US has ample resources to take tough action on this front, other countries which are an integral part of the fight against climate change may find themselves unable to raise the necessary funds. As such, it was really great to hear that G7 leaders made commitments towards climate finance and promised to raise their contributions to meet an overdue spending pledge of $100 billion a year to help poor countries reduce carbon emissions. While we look at bringing together resources in the fight against climate change, a key question we have to ask is, how do we connect SDG 7 and SDG 13? This is especially true in the context of markets like India. How do we really ensure access to reliable energy and link it to climate action at the same time? Even though wind and solar energy generation doubled from 2015 to 2020 and now make up about 1/10 of global electricity generation, the use of coal fell by only 1% during that time in real terms. So around 500 to 550 gigawatts coal power plants are planned, permitted, or under construction as we speak. Current electrification plans will make climate change worse, despite progress being made. Yet lack of access to power locks billions of people out of the modern economy. So linking access to energy with climate change has been a focus at the heart of the Foundation's mission to end energy poverty. And we continue to kind of really advocate with the G7 as well as with the G20, the finance ministers are meeting early July to really emphasize the need for them to really be acting on the commitments and ensuring that, LMIC countries are really able to meet their targets. So we are pretty optimistic and will continue our endeavor to really keep advocating for the right decisions to be made.
Right, and all of us, and you are at a very able position to do that. I mean, I was talking about that point before, Deepali, where, and you mentioned about it just now when you made that point about coal power plants and the fact that India needs to build no more. I think an associated point over there is, of course, we don't need to build more coal. We need to retire the existing coal, which is old and polluting. But at the same time, we also need to keep in mind that the climate gains that we aspire for are happening in a way which is equitable. The utility scale solar and the way that it is happening in India sometimes leaves a lot of room for challenges which will come through solar in future as well. I think the point that I'm trying to come to is that there are value chains of the DRE system which provide better jobs, better livelihood, more empowerment, and just a better social status, not just to the rural communities, but wherever they are placed. And it also will give climate gains to India that it aspires for. But as we know, the targets for the decentralized renewables that we have are lagging. We are not up to mark on where we should be. And there is, again, a lot of gap. And anyway, the last 1.5 years of COVID have made that gap really wide. What do you think will make for a convincing argument so that not just the people like us who are pushing for this agenda, so to speak, but actual real economy decision makers, government functionaries, bureaucrats, politicians, decision makers ultimately realize the social benefits that DRE brings along the way, especially given that they have actually moved on that train where utility scale is growing at a very rapid pace?
You're absolutely right, Aarti. And, the world is really at a tipping point with respect to climate change. And so it must really feature in the conversation of the recovery from COVID. At the same time, the climate conversation must consider the human and the economic cost of COVID. As the world comes together, especially in the run-up to COP26, to make investment decisions about climate financing, it is really critical that priority areas of these investments over the next few years are steered towards technologies that are not only sustainable, but also equitable, as you said. In addition to providing access to power, decentralized renewable energy systems have positive externalities that promote climate resilience and social equity. A recent study by Catalyst Off-Grid Advisors, supported by us, shows that the quickest and most affordable way to deliver inclusive economic growth, for example, in Africa, is to invest in decentralized renewable energy solutions, such as household solar systems, solar mini grids, and electric or LPG cookers for people who live on $2 to $10 a day. We at the Rockefeller Foundation have looked at energy access from beyond just an access point of view. Providing a connection with enough electricity to light a bulb and fan is not enough. While, of course, it can be transformative for a person's life, energy access must be viewed as a means to achieve productive use. Most electricity is used outside the home for income generation activities that have a direct impact on uplifting people from poverty. Without sufficient access to reliable power for agriculture and businesses, people risk being locked out of the modern economy. The question that then arises is, how do we scale up to meet electricity demand and in the process build a means to augment people's income? I think this was something that the panel was also touching on in the last panel. These questions are a must to answer in India's clean development story. We've tried to answer this question through our mini grids initiative with Smart Power India, which has created a positive impact for many entrepreneurs who have been able to increase their livelihoods due to reliable, clean off-grid connections. There's stories of entrepreneurs installing RO water systems that run on electricity from the Smart Power India supported mini grids that have started a bottled water business, having a positive spillover for clean water for the community. So while providing a mere connection is an essential first step, it is, however, insufficient to drive real economic development alone. And this is something that we realized very early on. And hence our entire effort has really been in terms of how do we really get new micro enterprises? How do you rejuvenate the existing enterprises so that energy access can really drive economic development? So that's really the vision that we're aspiring to get to.
Right. Thanks, Deepali. Quite interesting. I mean, I think one thing is sure, that the fact that decentralized renewable energy systems will be the indisputable energy system of future. Certainly, there is lots that will happen in the way the world will view DRE, that it's going to become center stage very soon, maybe just a matter of time. And, given that, so the earlier panel was also talking about the massive job losses that have happened in India the last 1.5 years. And, how sometimes there aren't even enough options for livelihoods. And always when we talk about renewable jobs, there are very positive numbers that everybody shares on how decentralized renewable systems and these smart solutions will bring new jobs to the rural economy. Are there any examples that you can share where DRE has been successful in the rural areas, and something to say how the so-called green jobs, which are also in line with sustainability principles, and they empower women, they create livelihoods. At the same time, they also contribute to the value chain, because scale is really becoming one thing to be considered and be conscious of. So, what are your thoughts on? Are there anything to be looking at in our Indian context specifically to be excited about?
Yeah, I mean, as we really make strides towards SDG 7 of achieving universal energy access by 2030, looking at energy access through a social and gender lens becomes increasingly important. Let me take the second part of your question first, which is really about empowering women in the value chain. Women have always played a key role as enablers of development for communities from the ground up. However, they remain underrepresented in the energy value chain, at the policy and decision-making levels, and in the workforce. They often, or I think invariably, always bear the cost of fuel collection, inefficient cook stoves, household air pollution, and lack access to labor-saving appliances. Looking at energy access through the prism of gender will allow us to empathize and understand how we can include women in the value chain and increase energy access. Since women are part of different social networks vis-a-vis men, their inclusion can help businesses reach out to more households. As consumers, we all know that women make more sustainable choices. And of course, you can clearly see my bias, Aarti over here. And they tend to have a bigger say in household energy decisions. So including women as key stakeholders in shaping the renewable energy value chain will help the design, production, distribution, and sales of sustainable energy technologies, for example, clean cooking stoves and lighting devices. Evidence has shown that access to energy can transform a woman's life and make her more independent. I've really seen it for myself. Being able to do multiple chores with a light bulb in the evening, to be feeling safe with street lighting, to reducing the drudgery of running a manual sewing machine or a manual rice huller. So decentralized renewable energy particularly plays an important role in involving women in the energy value chain by providing employment. Many jobs in the clean energy space go to unskilled and semi-skilled workers, providing a greater opportunity for women who are less likely to have the training or education to work in the formal sector. Not that I'm proposing that that's the route we should be going, but I'm just trying to seize an opportunity. Although there's no guarantee that DRE provides equal access to employment, a significant portion of green jobs are performed by women. Around 60% of the informal workers in the DRE sector is female, often employed as sales agents. We also know that women perform as well as men in the energy supply businesses, despite it being a male-dominated sector. Our own example in Odisha, where we have a network of 120 women known as Bijli Didis, collect the bills and address consumer concerns. As a result, an additional 8,000 customers started paying bills on time, and over 1,250 houses and 300 businesses got connected to the solar grid. This is what we've experienced firsthand through our work. Now, coming to the first part of your question, jobs and livelihood opportunities. So DRE has an immense potential to create jobs that are also helping in tackling climate change and lifting people out of poverty. Beyond just facilitating energy access in underserved markets, the decentralized approach to providing energy necessitates engagement and participation of local communities. By working with local communities, we not only focus on the end goal, but also the social benefits that can be created along the way. Through our work, we've seen that a decentralized approach has helped add more environmentally sustainable jobs into the economy and has had a much larger impact in doing so than large-scale renewable energy generation. For every megawatt of installed capacity, rooftop solar creates 24.7 jobs as compared to large-scale solar and wind plants that generate 3.5 and 1.27 jobs respectively. To put that in perspective, a $100,000 investment in a mini grid has the potential to create 1.4 to 2 direct and 20 to 30 indirect jobs. Energy access that is provided through distributed renewables helps people start or scale up businesses and thus creates new jobs and increases income. In 2017 to 2018, the availability of reliable energy through DRE led to the creation of 470,000 jobs. I mean, I love to quote the case of Sandhya, a resident of Shivpura village in Uttar Pradesh, who I happened to meet, used electricity from the mini grid that we had helped set up to start up a tailoring business. She's now able to run 2 electric sewing machines and train 10 women from nearby villages in tailoring. And Sandhya earlier used to be using that manual machine and, could barely, by the end of the day, get to do anything. But now with electricity and the electrical machines that she has, her business has grown and she's been able to really get many more women to be part of her journey. So challenges, of course, remain on both fronts. Despite access and greater employee diversity, benefit from energy access may not be equitable, but DRE has the potential to narrow these gaps. And I think the more mindful and conscious we're going to be about it upfront, the better results we're going to be seeing.
Understood, and makes sense. I also realize we are on top of the hour. I felt like asking you one last question. Feel free to give a very short answer, Deepali, if that's helpful. But we started from the point of how $1 billion and a leverage of 10 billion and other will be game changing. And with all of what you have spoken, I think it's amply clear that there is no question whether DRE is preferred or not for rural off-grid regions of the country and why it's really the thing to do in terms of scaling up solar in India as well. Somewhere in the middle, I feel the question that remains unaddressed at the moment is, are there technologies and innovations that can make decentralized viable for large-scale option? Because scale up in India has been a problem, and there have been very worthy pilots, some of which you have mentioned, and the change that is happening in the lives of women or students or shopkeepers is just not documented enough, but it exists. My question is simple: do you see hope that all these little experiments and examples that you have said are so empowering and inspiring can actually lead to something which is a large scale change? Will that option be there, or will we just be guided by small, small inspiring experiments in solar, so to speak?
Aarti, I'm absolutely convinced that, we are going to be able to scale and sustain these efforts. I think, and that's why we've set a target of not 100,000 people, but we're saying, we really want to get to 1 billion people. I think the work that we're doing in India, we already have close to 500 mini grids. So we are impacting and, an average village size of 250 households. So, and with Tata Power wanting to do 10,000 mini grids, I mean, we're talking about scale. So, it's definitely going to be a game changer. From the work that we've done in India, we've been able to take it to Myanmar and many countries in Africa. I think just the fact that, IKEA Foundation has come forward to really partner with us to really create this global entity. I think there's really a commitment, based on our India experience that has really shown us how, and what needs to be done. Of course, the technology piece that you were just alluding to, there's so much more that needs to be done. We can't have off-the-shelf solutions that work, lithium-ion batteries. I mean, there are significant cost issues, the smart metering, etc. So I think, we will have to address quite a few challenges, but I think if we can really come together and really look at how we're going to make energy access an issue of the past, I mean, that really is something that we are going to be putting all our might from the foundation perspective. And we're very excited that we have so many other partners who want to be part of this journey. We can't do it alone.